It's Saturday. Time for another live stream. My name is Paul Tobey from jazzmental.com. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate the fact that you're here because, of course, Saturdays would not be Saturday without a Jazz Mental live stream and your participation. We are going to talk about Mo Better Blues today. If you haven't seen the movie with Denzel Washington, it's actually a pretty cool movie. The music is interesting because it's simple, yet there's this groove that happens underneath it that I think we need to get our fingers and our brains and our hearts around. And that's what we're going to do exactly today. I'm going to share some sheet music with you just momentarily. But before I do that, for those of you that are here early, I super appreciate the fact that you showed up on time. So just a quick shout out to Ben, Keith, Fritz, Rich, Michael, Alan, Peter, Shai, Karen, nice to see you here. And for everyone that has not introduced themselves in the chat, that's kind of where we communicate. So please go and do that. Let me, as I normally do, and don't all rush to grab it because it's showing on your screen right now. I typically hide it until a certain point, but then I just let it show up on your screen. So you don't really need to go and download it right away because it bogs the site down, apparently. But I am going to throw it in the chat area right now and pin it to the top of the chat so that it's there throughout the duration of today's session. And for the rest of you that have said hi, Claudio, Paul, Jess, Alan, James, Mr. Lightning, nice to see you. Okay, so listen, I'm going to play this thing. The way that I'm going to go about it, I think, because it never turns out the way that I actually anticipate, and that's really the nature of jazz, I'm going to play it straight, as if it were written on the sheet music, as close to the sheet music as I can possibly get. And I think that's a good place to start. If you just get that underneath your fingers, it'll help you a lot when you move forward from that point. And of course, then I'm going to expand on it with a few ideas, and I'm going to get this groove happening that's really there from the beginning. It's just because I'm playing the notes that are on the page. It might not sound like it's there, but I do have the groove in my soul. And we're going to talk about specifically how to create that. So that's what I want you to listen for. Listen for the groove and try to feel the music as it moves forward. I would like to say that as I'm playing it, think to yourself, is this a piece of sheet music? Like, for example, if we transcribed this, would that be something you'd want to have? And of course, I'm also looking for feedback on sound, making sure the levels are okay. We've had a few challenges with levels the last few weeks, so hopefully it's working for you. Just a quick shout out to everyone who just joined us in the last few seconds. And if you would like, please let me know, actually it's a request from me, please let me know if my vocal mic is loud enough for you. If not, I can turn it up, and of course the piano mics, which you'll hear in just a second. So go download the sheet music, I'll play this thing, and we'll get going. All right. So, like I mentioned, I would like you to tell me if that's something that is worth transcribing. I have to put my transcriber in Poland on it. We call him PJ because we can't really pronounce his name. But he's a great transcriber, and if you'd like something like that, you have to let me know in the chat area, and I'll be sending out an email at some point just to kind of get some feedback. I'll basically point to where that is in the session, and you can listen to it again, and then maybe we can decide whether that's something we want. I know that one person said volume low. I would like other feedback. I know that Alan said it sounds good there. So my suggestion for the moment is that you just turn up your volume. Maybe that'll help. And then we can kind of go from there. Yeah, like blues in church. Can I get an amen? You know, it is kind of bluesy, and that's really part of what we're going to be talking about today. And thanks for pointing that out, because I do think it definitely has that sound. If you listen to this, and I'll just play this slowly. This is kind of like an Oscar Peterson thing. So if you look at endings, which go from 2-5-1, so basically what you're doing is in the right hand, you're playing 5 and the root, and you're playing grace notes into that, C to C sharp to D. And in the left hand, you want to play a sixth. So you've got the sixth of the chord here. So the sixth and the fifth in the middle and roots on the outside. And then come down to the fourth and then hit the third. And in the left hand, you're switching from 6 to 5. One more time. Now there's a bunch of different versions of that, like this, where you're going from the 7th. You can also go from the 7th. Hear that? Please raise mic volume. Okay, I'll do the best I can. That's a little bit louder, and for me it's peaking, so if I go louder than that, it's just going to distort. So just, if you could, just turn up your volume a little bit. It would be really helpful. Now that's something that came right out of, I don't know if you've heard this from Oscar, Hymn to Freedom. And then we've got more people complaining about audio. So let me see if I can fix that a little bit. I'll try without distorting it, and that's always the challenge with audio. I'm going to put it up to here. Check 1, 2. And then let's see if that's loud enough and not distorting. Please let me know as soon as you can. I know there's a delay between what I say and what you respond. So if it's a little bit louder and you can hear it fine now, I'll try to also speak a little bit louder. The thing is, we don't want it to distort. I might need to change this vocal microphone in the future, but that's what we have to work with today. So one more time, we're going from the 7th to the 6th to the 5th in this version. In this version, we're just going from the 6th to the 5th. And in this version, we're going from flat 7. And there's a bunch of endings that you can do. Okay. So James says not distorting. That's good. Hopefully it's loud enough to move forward. All right, let's take a look at the tune itself. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this a little bit larger and place that on your screen just so that I can write on it and kind of make a few notes, because I think it's important to kind of understand what's really happening in this tune and why it sounds really pleasing to the ear. It's definitely, there's nothing outside about it. It sounds pretty straightforward, but it is a nice, sweet little melody and nice, sweet chords, and it does have that gospel sound to it, which is really nice. So let me see if I can get that on your screen. Yeah. So what we're going to do is just take a look at the first bar. Now all that is the reverse of this. It's just going up. And it's really important that you play that as written, because there are other versions of it that I've heard, but none quite as sweet as that. You want to keep it kind of open, and you don't want to get too many chords in there, or too many notes on the chords. For example, right? I've heard people do things like that where you've got more notes in the chord, but I think it's better like this. It's just sweet to get it moving. Then this is a 2/5 of A minor. So instead of going from 2, which is B half diminished 7th to E flat to E7 to A minor, and of course we're talking about this bar right here. Going to E7, and that's an interesting voicing for E7. Basically, it's a drop 2 voicing. So if you look at E7, take the second note from the top and drop it down to the bass. You get that sound. And that's exactly where that voicing came from. Pretty straightforward on the A minor. Now this is, I always was a little suspect about why this voicing here, which is the A chord, it's so simple. So basically it's just a triad, and you've got a 5th in the bass, and then a D sus chord. But it does sound nice. I lost my place in the sheet music. I think what we need to do is just take a look at that last little chord, because it just really repeats itself. And the only change is that last set of chords. And I'm referring to right here. So this is the progression we had before. So just start here, 5th in the bass, 3rd and root. It's such a real sort of call and response tune, right? Here's the call, response, call, response, call, response, call, and then pretty simple. So that's all you need to learn about that. What I want to talk about is the groove that happens after that. Or if you can hear it, it's starting to happen right when you're playing the head. So we're not going to put the sheet music on the screen for right now because I don't want it to be too distracting. And let's just talk about this. When I start to solo, here is the rhythm that's going on in my head. It's like this. 1, 2, it's like 16th notes, right? So then when it comes to soloing, those 16th notes turn into lines. Right? So you always have to be thinking 16th notes in your head. And of course, the more you hear that, the more it kind of sticks as far as the rhythm is concerned. And the other thing is, you really want to get your foot going on 1, 2, 3, and 4, except 2 and 4 are kind of like the accent. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a good idea to just kind of play fifths in the left hand. I think the sheet music that you have is fine. It's not the same one on the screen. I think that's okay. It's probably the same version. Definitely on 2 pages, though. So I apologize for that if it's not perfect, but it's what's there. So that's what you get. What we're doing here, Mariah says, "Oh Lord, this existing, please God, let this man post the live stream after it resumes." I don't know. Did it stop resuming? I don't know. I don't know if there's any pauses. Maybe somebody can let me know that there's been no break in the live stream. But Mariah, as soon as the live stream's over, you can watch the replay. Or right now, you can go back to the beginning and watch it from the beginning. That's kind of the way YouTube live stream works. You can either play it live or you can start to watch the replay as soon as it starts. Song sounds like theme from All in the Family. Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I can't remember what it is. It's, yeah, you're right. She sings it right at the piano. Trying to remember how it goes. Kind of like that, except it doesn't really have that gospel feel the way they do it. But anyway. So I was saying, keep these fifths going in your left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then just kind of think about soloing over that. Now, another thing that you can do to kind of keep that feel going is if you I can't remember it. We're borrowing from Blackbird, right? The version of Brad Meldau, where you've got this G pedal happening throughout the tune. So think about that, because it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of this. I think it's that feel is really something that you have to really work on. It's not just something that happens on its own. You really have to feel that 16th notes, right? With that sort of constant beat going on, but really thinking 2 and 4. 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. And the syncopation really helps with the groove. So if you think about syncopation, right? It's like 3/4. Syncopation is just one of those things that can only happen once you feel that groove. So let's just work on that for a little bit. My suggestion is you just kind of play this fifth in the bass, and let's put the sheet music back so we're taking a look at the chord changes at the same time. So we've got G, so just play this fifth and then get your finger, the thumb, because that's really going to help you with your feel. Come up to the B natural here just before the C, right? Play around with the chords a little bit. Instead of soloing, just kind of play block chords. Play that. Now, it is straight eighths, obviously. If we were to swing it, it would sound more like this. And I think there's definitely elements of swing when you do play it straight ahead, but it's still straight, but thinking kind of that backbeat where you've got the swing happening. You know? Both are acceptable, but that's not the tune. So if we were to incorporate those ideas into the tune, it still swings, but it's straight eights. Except it's now more 16th swing. I'm seeing a lot of comments. What are the questions that you have about this? I would like to talk a little bit about the soloing possibilities, because obviously we're not dealing with a lot of changes here. And there are some tricks to making it sound as bluesy and as gospely and as jazz as you can possibly make it. So if you have any specific questions, then that's great. Let me give you one idea just to start off with, because we've talked about the groove, and I think just, that feel, we've talked about it, we've got it kind of cooking within us. Where do we go with soloing? Because to me, you can't venture too far from this. Like if you start to play outside, that's great if you've got a rhythm section to back you up. But as a solo piano player, it works, but only later in the solo. So for example, if we get to here, and we start playing out, it starts to sound like this. It's only appropriate in certain circumstances. So to me, play as simply as possible, make little melodies, but where do those melodies come from? Jerry says, I would love to buy a transcription of your solo. Okay, well, that's one person, that's good. I think, what happened to, it just disappeared. I guess that got deleted, but if you wanted to grab a transcription, just let me know. You can send me an email, or you can write it quickly and then delete it in the chat. That's completely up to you. Hey, Robert from Fort Worth, what scale working when you're playing the A minor 7 to A? How do you handle that? Well, it's funny you should ask, because he's really talking about, and I need to go back and make a full screen snip out of this just so I can talk about that bar, because it is important. I should have mentioned that, and I'm glad you preempted it with the thought, which is how do we handle the A minor to A7? And he's talking about this bar right here. So we're going from A minor to A7, which sounds like this in the melody. So you really have to think about the A7 as a passing chord, and it's not necessarily in the solo. I don't even play the A chord in the solo. I just stick to A minor. So I'm playing like this from the first bar. I'm not even playing E7 here. I'm just sticking to C to A. Stay on A minor to D to D7. If we were to stick the A chord in there, I would say, let's try this from the A minor 7. like it's not really necessary from a soloing perspective, because as soon as you start putting more notes in there, it kind of even sounds wrong to play an A chord. You really have to think about it before you do it. So if you are going to do it, I would say catch the A minor chord and then play some kind of like turn in jazz, what we call a turn. So start at the third of the chord and then play the chord beneath it. In terms of voicing the left hand, I would say, you know, A minor seventh to kind of A with a sharp 5, or even with a flat 9. But again, I didn't do any of that in my soloing. I just stuck to A minor. So that's one little thing that you have to think about when you're playing this tune. The bass player, he's not going to care. He typically wouldn't play the third on that chord anyway. So it's not going to clash with what he's doing, even if he did play an A chord. Because, again, he's just playing roots and fifths in this kind of style. He's almost like, if I was a bass player, I might play some kind of like bass, like a bossa nova like this. So again, we didn't go to A7. And then the bass is doing this. Okay. So not really that necessary. I was, before I got that question, just starting to talk about what I would play in terms of soloing. And to me, there's only a couple of options, really, with a simple tune like this. Let me just erase these things here. So the first thought is the scales for each are pretty tonal. So a G scale is that. One more time. And then from there, you can play the bebop scale, which is either the C sharp as a passing note, which is the flat 5, or you can play the sharp 5 as well. Now, I like the sharp 5 because it kind of lends itself to blues. You look at a C chord, right? You've got that sharp 5 as a passing note to the third of the chord. In G, it's a passing note to the sixth. And then, of course, because we are doing those kinds of notes, a blues scale works really well. So, blues scale. And if we just used a combination of those over the first few bars, it might sound something like this. Scale. Still on scale. And then blues scale. So kind of mixing up the two. Blues. So they kind of work hand in hand. The simple bebop scale and the blues scale. Now, the other thing you have to think about is these types of patterns. great guitar trick, basically the pentatonic scale. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And then if you just play patterns on this, like a 4-note pattern, and then go up with a 3-note pattern, come down with a 4-note pattern, so there's 3 choices that you can use. All of them are based in G. You don't even need to think about chord changes, really. So just play the G scale. And then blues scale. And then pentatonics. All of them work really well. The trick is to kind of fit them together in some kind of phrase and then separate those phrases with rest to give the ear a break. Pentatonics. Blues. Pentatonics. And then some chromatics at the end, just chromatic scale, really. Interesting thing about the chromatic scale, if you use that a lot, it just sounds like this. You know, it just can go on and on. So you have to use it in moderation, because if you use it too much, it just kind of sounds like you're playing a chromatic scale. Let's check in with everybody and see if there's any other comments. Oh, well, so Ben said that he wanted to use the pentatonic scale, so it's a good thing I preempted that without seeing Ben's comment. And there's that comment again from Jerry, which disappeared for a second and then it came back, which is really weird. Dude, Tony says, can you make anything sound great? Yeah, pretty much. Give me an example by what you mean by anything. That would be an interesting challenge. Can I make anything sound good? Probably. I mean, with limitation, I mean, obviously, if you're playing outside all the time, it's just going to sound wrong. So this is completely outside, right? Let's play, get going on G. And then, you know, obviously, if you're just going to play outside all the time, it sounds wrong. But if you did this, it starts to sound cool because you're sidestepping into other keys and playing what we call outside. But you're only doing it by kind of like half steps, but you're resolving as quickly as you possibly can because you don't want to stay too far out. The rhythm section can really help with that. In solo piano, it's a lot harder because, of course, you have to keep tonality going, whereas if you've got a bass and drums, the bass player is definitely keeping tonality going, but you are free to explore as far outside as you want because they're kind of keeping it together behind you. Peter, thank you. Be happy to also grab a transcription. Okay, I mean, Tony says, okay, he'd like one too. All right, so I'll get the transcriber to work on it. Maybe I'll do that one. I'll play another one closer to the end of this thing, which is in a few minutes. And maybe we can decide amongst us which is the better. So we're going to have to open our ears a little bit and take a look at another version, and then you can tell me which one you'd like. We did that the other day, and it worked really well. By the way, for those of you that purchased the one that you'd been waiting on, which is the one from Have You Met Miss Jones, it's ready. You're going to receive an email from me this afternoon with a download link. So thanks for doing that. It really helped. I think our transcriber did a great job on it, and you can look forward to receiving that this afternoon. Those that did it, and names come to mind: Peter, Amoti, Kevin. There's a few others. I can't remember everybody's name, but those that did kind of preempt that whole thing and purchase it, it really helped get the transcriber paid off and moving forward. All right. Rich says, on a side note, favorite recording artist version of this. Gordon Webster's is cool, but subdued. I liked hearing how Paul cut loose with it a little today. Yeah, well, thanks. I'm definitely not subdued. Matthew says, as always, great tutorial. That's nice. Thank you so much. And by the way, I should point out that we have had people make super thanks here in YouTube. We prefer, if you just go over to the Jazz Mental website, to keep these Saturday live streams going and grab and click the donate button. It really helps us do these things. It is a lot of effort to get these things together, get the sheet music ready, pay off the transcriber, things like that. So for those of you that have been thinking about a donation but haven't done one yet, it would really help us. So jazzmental.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, hit the donate button, and away we go. Perfect. Too much chromatic scale. Sounds like a circus gig. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Mariah says, seems like an underscore for two opposing characters on screen who finally found their groove. These two contrasting melodies you just demonstrated. Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing about playing outside. It's the further out you get, the harder it is on the listener. So you want to really resolve. So even if you started out like this, it's playing out in moderation so that there's harmonic interest, but it's just not too far. You can always take soloing too far. Then it just becomes free jazz. And I've never been or studied a lot of free jazz. I just think it's, to my ears, not as pleasing as melody. I love melody. Melody is the thing that really turns me on. Melody and groove, you know me, right? I'm always rhythm and blues, rhythm and groove kind of player, especially swing. Winston says, love you coming back to the song. Yeah, I mean, we haven't done this song in a live stream before. We did it very early on in our Jazz Mental tutorials, but we've never really focused a live stream on it. And it's good to talk about tunes like this because I think they are important to our repertoire. Because if all we ever do is play repertoire like this, you know, if we just talk about swing and stuff like that all the time, it's nice for the listener to hear something like this. No, versus. You know, it's like, give the listener a break with some nice melody. And you can also throw in your fills if you want to. It's always nice to have those fills in your pocket. But melody is the thing that really, for listeners, helps them transition to these lines. So if the lines come in between, let's do that. Let's play the call. And instead of doing this, let's answer with more notes. So you're kind of mixing two styles at the same time. I mean, obviously the groove is the same, but jazz creeps in your jazz lines, and it's always nice to have those in your back pocket. Are there any other questions about this tune? If not, actually, I'm sure there are, but I'm just gonna play another version. And I think this one's probably going to be a little bit more adventurous than the first one. So let me do that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about that. This time I just kind of want to listen to my personal preference of playing coming through, yet keeping the groove together. And just before I do that, Allison asks, do you think call and response works when playing with other instruments? Absolutely. That's actually one of the best uses of call and response. So if I were trading twos with players, that player would go like this. And I would do this. And they might do this. And I might do this. And they might do this. And I might do this. And then together we might do this. And so you've got this playing off of each other, and you're not necessarily catching the same notes because that would be boring if they did this and you did this. You know, it's not nearly as interesting as if you're kind of playing contrasting lines and a little bit of counterpoint. So yes, Allison, I absolutely would say 100% it does work well when instruments play off of each other in a call and response. Let me play one more time, and this is going to be recorded, so maybe you could listen back to both versions, the one at the beginning and the one that I'm now warmed up on. Maybe hear the difference between the two. Tritone subs, to answer your question, is something that works definitely well in moderation for sure. I would stick to the ending of a phrase. So if I were doing a tritone sub, it might sound something like this. Here. So half step into the destination chord, which is C. So you're going from D flat 7. So like this. So we did E flat 7 to D7, right? So always kind of half step, which is the tritone substitution, but we're not substituting another chord. We're adding a tritone substitution. So it's not like before the C chord, we're playing a G7. We're just going to C, so we have to throw in a G7 or this tritone substitution, which is D flat 7. So it worked really well in that instance, right? And then we could go to B flat instead of B, right? The tritone substitution of E7. So let's do that. That worked. Right, E flat 7, sharp 11 to D7. A flat 7. And then just play a whole bunch of tritone subs. Yes, with some exclamation marks. Yeah, I mean, you could get, I think they do work well, tritone subs, but like I say, as passing chords only. I wouldn't kind of hang out there too long. For example, I wouldn't do this. It's just too long. And then just using all tritone subs, again, it's really just personal preference. And those things you can do if you've got a rhythm section. Otherwise, it just sounds really... Could you imagine doing this tune at like a hotel gig? And then on solo piano, you just do something like this. The listener is going to be like, what? The cool people in the room would be going, yeah, man. And the rest of them would be going, man, I don't know. What kind of substance is this person on? Andrew says, hi from England. Great tune, great playing. Thanks very much for the video walkthrough. You're very welcome. My pleasure. Andrew? Love the blue chords thrown in and then the hemiola idea used to mix the rhythms up before you played outside for a bit. Yeah, my pleasure. All things work in moderation. Yes, they do. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun hanging out with you today. I super appreciate it. A couple of things before we go. As always, your participation is 100% appreciated. You know that from me. We kind of have this thing going, especially the regulars like Rich and Ben and a whole bunch of names I can't think of, Amodi, Karen, and kind of anybody who's been here. And if I missed your name, I'm sorry, Alan, and everybody else. You know, you're showing up every week, and that means a lot to me. and a lot to the channel. So thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. If you could, one thing, after the video is over, go to the comment section and make some kind of comment like, hey, Paul, great session. It really helps the channel. And if you want to bookmark the thing at the bottom right-hand corner of the video, once the live stream is over, there's going to be a little button that says save. And then you can click the little button that says, or the little checkbox that says watch later. Those things I found out really help the channel. So if you could do either of those things or both for me, that would be great. Winston says, thank you. And I really appreciate you as well, Winston. Thank you. All right. The sheet music link is going to be up for a few more minutes. I'm going to take it down momentarily. It's at the top of the chat. So if you haven't grabbed the sheet music, please go and do that. It's 100% free. And that's all for me from Niagara-on-the-Lake in Ontario, Canada. I'm going to go hang out with some people who came to visit my wife, Nancy, today. As you know, she's not been well. Cancer is something that is hard on all of us. So I'm going to go spend some time with them, and I appreciate all of you. I will see you next Saturday.